Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you're all doing great. So I'm excited for today's video. I wanted to talk about fragrances that I consider rich, opulent, deep fragrances. I haven't reached for these in months, and with the weather sort of changing, getting a little cooler, I'm really looking forward to reaching for fragrances that are a little richer, a little opulent, a little deeper. And I've compiled a list of 10 fragrances that I own in my collection. There are thousands of fragrances out there that I'm sure could make this list and are rich and opulent and beautiful. And there are fragrances in my collection that I could have added to this list. And to be honest, my list was originally a little shorter, and then I added 2 fragrances at the end, so we have a list of 10. So yes, it's a list of 10, and I did try my best to not pick fragrances from the same perfume house, but there are 2 from the same perfume house, and they both definitely belong on the list. So without further ado, let's start with a fragrance from the house of Neela Vermeire. This is Trayee. This is full-bodied, exotic, opulent. It is a beautiful incense fragrance with a ton of spices. There is cardamom, saffron, clove, cinnamon in here. There's even a basil note and a note of cannabis, but I don't really get anything cannabis-like in here. It is beautiful. It is complex. It is deep. If you like incense fragrances, you have to try this. It's not a clean, airy incense. It's not like Cardinal by the House of Healy. It's not like Chapel Factory's Holy Stick. This one is definitely more full-bodied. It's more complex. I would say that this one is brown in color if I had to pick and choose a color for this fragrance. At the same time, it's not a smoky, challenging incense, but you have to like a full-bodied fragrance. You have to like spices. There's an overabundance of spices together with the incense for an exotic, opulent, beautiful, beautiful fragrance. So that is Trayee from the house of Neela Vermeire. The next one is from the house of Amouage. Now, truth be told, I could have about 3 more fragrances on this list from Amouage alone, but again, I wanted to pick just one. This is Memoir Woman. Such a beautiful bottle. I love, love, love this fragrance. This is considered a chypre fragrance, and what it is, in essence, is a floral fragrance taken into this dark, syrupy direction. And when I say syrupy, I don't mean cloying or off-putting. It is rich, it is opulent. There is an incense running through the fragrance. There's a sweetness that comes from like a black licorice, that sort of bitter, dark sweetness. It is absolutely stunning. It is one of the more complex, rich, darker fragrances in my collection that I love reaching for as an evening fragrance. I think I wore this as my scent of New Year's Eve last year. It is 100% unisex. It is the definition of opulence. It is the definition of complexity. The florals in here don't necessarily take this fragrance into a feminine direction, and there are a lot of resins in here for a warm, sort of ambery base as a backdrop. It is a stunning, stunning fragrance from the house of Amouage. This is one of the ones that I have a backup bottle of. This is a more modern version. I have the one with the name on the neck of the cap, with the non-magnetic cap actually. It's just a beautiful, opulent fragrance. And although I could have included Jubilation 25 and Epic Woman on this list from the house of Amouage, this one definitely is at the top of the list for opulence and richness in terms of scent profile. So that's Memoir Woman from the house of Amouage. So the next one is from the house of Chanel, and this is none other than the epic, the classic Coco Chanel. So this is somewhat vintage. I'm not sure exactly what year this is from. It's not a spray, it's a dab-on, and it's the Eau de Parfum. This is considered a spicy oriental fragrance. I know we don't use that term anymore, but it's considered a spicy oriental. And how I would describe this is an amber fragrance, but it's a dense, spicy floral. It also has what I would consider an exotic edge to it. So this opens with a note of coriander and pimento that so perfectly balances the freshness from the mandarin orange in here, a freshness that's not super zesty, the mandarin orange giving a darker citrus aspect to the fragrance, but the spice in here just perfectly contrasts that freshness. And then you have this melange of flowers. There's orange blossom and iris and jasmine and ylang ylang in here, which is a common grouping of florals. But the florals, I would say, are somewhat darkened with the spices and the cinnamon in here. And there's an incense running through the fragrance with a sweetness from honey and tonka and the warmth of benzoin. So you have complexity, you have richness. I picture a woman in the 50s or the 60s wearing a tight suit with the skirt up to the knee, not short, not vulgar, classy yet sexy, holding a Chanel bag, walking on Rodeo Drive, Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. And even though I'm not necessarily that type of woman, I really, really can appreciate this fragrance. It's an iconic fragrance, and it definitely belongs on this list of rich, opulent, lush fragrances. So that's Coco Chanel. So the next one is from the house of Serge Lutens, and this is Sarrasins. Look at the color of the juice. I would not recommend spraying this on any clothing. It's dark, and I know that these are artificially colored, but it really does match the scent profile. This is jasmine, but it is a goth take on jasmine. It's a little bit animalic, it's a little bit spiced, it's a little bit leathery, and it's even a little bit sweet without being too sweet. It really is a dark, sexy, lush, opulent take on jasmine. It's a beautiful fragrance, it really is. I haven't had the chance to wear this because this is not something that I would reach for in the warm weather, but I really do look forward to wearing more of this. I wore this a few times. It's stunning, stunning, and it belongs on this list. A lot of the fragrances by Serge Lutens have a sort of darkness to it and depth for sure, but this one, it just came to mind as the one that belongs on this list. There's something very sexy about it. There's something very goth about it. Yet at the same time, it's jasmine, which can be so delicate in certain interpretations. But this one in particular is rich and opulent, and that's why it's on this list. So that's Sarrasins. So the next one is from the house of Maison Francis Kurkdjian, and this is Oud Extrait. Now, I had Oud Satin Mood and I sold it. It was too sweet. It was too much for me. And there's a part of me that regrets selling that fragrance. Maybe I just wanted to keep it in my collection, but I wasn't reaching for it. And then I went for Oud Extrait. I'm not sure what the regular EDP smells like, but this one is a really, really nice fragrance. And even though I do describe this as opulent and rich, and it is on this list, I feel like it's a more subdued sort of richness in a way. So what you have here is a very, very smooth, non-animalic oud. So this is not the type of oud for those that really like niche oud fragrances, the animalic type of oud that smells like cheese. That's not what this is. This is super smooth. This is in the style of Maison Francis Kurkdjian wearable fragrances, to an extent mass appealing. What I like about this is it is smooth. I get something almost chocolatey in the opening, and to the extent that this smells like an oud fragrance, it's more of a woody sort of fragrance in my opinion. It does have a sweetness, but not as sweet and cloying as Oud Satin Mood. This one is definitely a little bit more refined to my nose. It's a little bit more to my taste, and there's something musky about this as well. I feel like it has a musky delivery, but overall it's a rich scent profile, and it is opulent in its own way, but in a more discreet way. It's a discreet opulent, And what I like about this, even though it's not really an oud fragrance in the true sense, and it does have some vanilla components, it's not overdone, it's not too sweet, it's not too in your face. It's sort of luxurious in a quiet way, and it has an opulence, but in a discreet way. So that's why it's on this list. So that's Oud Extrait. So the next one is from the house of Parfums de Nicolai, and this is Sacrebleu. This fragrance is a modern twist on Guerlain's L'air Bleu. Now, L'air Bleu and Mitsuko could absolutely be on this list, but they're not. They have a special place in the world of perfumery. I wanted to feature different fragrances. So Sacrebleu, in my opinion, is a modern twist on a classic. It's a vintage-leaning fragrance. It's not the easiest to wear. I think L'Air Bleu is also a little tough to wear for certain people, but if you like that fragrance, this is a twist on L'Air Bleu. So this one opens quite floral, and there's a fruity touch in here as well. So that is different from L'Air Bleu, this fruity touch. There's a note of red fruits in here, whatever that means. So it opens quite floral, but then at the same time, it's ambery and there's a sweetness. It manages to be sweet, but without being sugary vanillic sweet. It's powdery, it's vintage leaning. It is a full-bodied floral fragrance. And it really is very, very reminiscent of L'Air Bleu. There are differences. It's not a dupe, but it is in its own way opulent and rich and full-bodied and lush, but not in the way that Memoir Woman is, not in the way that Coco Chanel is. It's not as dark as those fragrances. This one has a lighter floral scent profile, if that makes sense. This one is not taken into a darkened, spiced direction, but it is vintage leaning and it is a very bombastic fragrance. So it does belong on the list because it is opulent in its own right. And it's an interesting one. If you like L'Air Bleu, you should get your nose on this one. It's not for everyone, but I love L'Air Bleu, so I can appreciate Sacrebleu from the house of Nicolai. So the next one is from the house of Roja, and this is Diaghilev. So this fragrance is such a complex chypre fragrance. It is absolutely stunning. Stunning fragrance. Now, I made no dent in this practically new bottle because I'm still making my way through a decant that I have. Now, the last time that I wore this fragrance, I was away. It was a weekend with my sister at a spa up in Connecticut. The weather was still chilly and I was able to enjoy this. I'm almost done with this. There's maybe 2 sprays left in this little decant, and I haven't touched the fragrance since. This is not something that I would wear in the warmer weather. It is a complex, deep fragrance that really does take you on a journey. It opens fresh and green with spices. There's something a little bit animalic in here. That animalic touch is with the fragrance all the way to the dry down. And in the dry down, I feel like it's a little bit less animalic. It's absolutely stunning. There's a beautiful incense that runs through the fragrance. There's a floral heart with green touches, and then there's a peach note in here. And like I said, there is something a little funky. There's cumin and civet, and by the time it dries down, I feel like the fragrance has a sort of leathery texture to it, and I don't get that animalic quality as much in the dry down. It is round. It is smooth. There is nothing rough about the edges of this fragrance. It really is a stunning, opulent, beautiful interpretation of a chypre fragrance. Well, it is a chypre fragrance, and I think it is just stunning. And it's one of the fragrances that I immediately thought of along with Memoir Woman when I was compiling a list for this video. So this one is the definition of richness and opulence, and it's classy on a man, on a woman. It's elevated, and I know it's expensive. I did purchase this at a discounter. It was still quite pricey, but I think it's worth it. If you enjoy chypre fragrances, you should definitely get your nose on this one. I know that there's a perfume from the house of Nicolai, New York Intense 1, that is said to hint at Diaghilev. I've never smelt it because everyone says it's masculine leaning, but I am tempted to give that one a try. I'm just curious because I really do love this one. I would love to get my nose on that one. So that is Diaghilev from the house of Roja. So the next one is from the house of Chanel. So this is the second Chanel. And this is the EDP. It's a huge 200 ml bottle of Le Lion. So I had the 75 ml bottle and I upgraded to the 200 ml because I love this fragrance. This is a beautiful amber fragrance that focuses on labdanum. So it's smoky, it's dark, it's exotic, it's leathery, it's ambery, it's warm, it's rich and opulent, it's unisex, it's great on a man, it's great on a woman. I disagree with all those reviews that I read that say that this is masculine leaning. This is absolutely unisex. I love this fragrance. I don't want Chanel to change, reformulate this, or discontinue this. And that fear has a little part of me thinking of backing this up, but I don't want to get out of control because this is a huge 200 ml size bottle. And I'm sure that this is just fine with all the fragrances that I have. This is one of the most stunning fragrances in my collection. There's a little sweetness in here that comes along with the amber, but it's warm, it's not too sweet. I love the smokiness. It's rich and opulent, and it definitely belongs on this list. So that's Le Lion from the house of Chanel. So the next one is from the house of Guerlain, and it's interesting that A, I have a full bottle, and B, that this is on the list, because when I was talking about this fragrance, when I had just a little sample decant, I did not speak highly of the fragrance. This is Ambre Samar. So this does belong on the list, even though it's not one of my favorite fragrances. And I did not expect to purchase a full bottle, but I did find a tester with a cap, and it was at a great price. And the reason that I purchased this is that I kept using the remainder of that decant. And once in a while, I do like a fragrance that is thick and syrupy and maybe even a little bit synthetic smelling and a little too sweet. And this is that sort of fragrance, similar to the way Guidance 46 is not really me, but at the same time, I was addicted to the original Guidance. And after I sold it, I purchased Guidance 46. Once in a while, I want a fragrance like this. So this is an amber that's quite spiced. It's quite syrupy in its consistency, and it's quite sweet. And yes, in my opinion, it does have a synthetic quality to it. It also does remind me a little bit of tobacco honey, which is in the L'Art et la Matière line of fragrances and much more expensive. And there is something about that fragrance that I like, but I wouldn't spend the money for a full bottle. So this is the compromise for me. So this one opens as a quite spiced ambery fragrance with a sweetness from honey as well as vanilla. And I would even go so far as to say that it's a spicy ambery gourmand in a sense. I get something of like a dark coffee note in the opening, and then I think it sort of transitions a little, and there's something that's almost tobacco-like in the fragrance. Hence, it's reminiscent of tobacco honey, but not as much of that tobacco aspect in this one as in tobacco honey. But I think the honey and the hints of tobacco in this ambery spiced scent profile sort of hints at tobacco honey. Are they redundant to each other? I'm not sure. This one is a little different. This one definitely does have a Middle Eastern vibe. And like I keep saying, it is a little bit synthetic smelling and a little bit too sweet in a sort of syrupy way, which is not usually to my liking, but it is different from the other ambers that I have. I have some really nice ambers that I think are really very well made. And this one is a little different. It's a little more playful, and I'm open to new fragrances. I'm open to trying different things. And this one does belong on the list because it is a rich fragrance. It is an opulent fragrance. And so that's Ambre Samar from the house of Guerlain. And this brings us to the last one on the list, an iconic fragrance from 1987. This is Christian Dior's Poison. This is a scent memory for me. This reminds me of my friend and I invading her mother's perfume tray. She had a dabber, it might have been the Esprit de Parfum, which I have right here. She had one of these bottles of Poison, and we would help ourselves, and I would dab this on, and it was allowed. It wasn't against the rules. And so whenever I smell this fragrance, it takes me back to that time. It's iconic. It is a fragrance that is full-bodied, like the fragrances from the 80s. They weren't afraid to be bold. This is a floral fragrance that almost has like a goth vibe to it. It's a honeyed floral with a papanax, a beautiful incense running through the fragrance with some fruity touches from plum in here. It manages to be fruity and it manages to be a little bit sweet and floral without being cloying and artificial smelling and too sweet and too gourmand or sticky. It's none of those. It is absolutely stunning. The way the florals meld together with the plum and the incense and the woods and the ambery aspects in the base and the spices in here. It's an iconic fragrance. It's probably a woman who is maybe a little sexier, a little wilder than the woman that's wearing the Coco Chanel, holding the Chanel bag with her suit. This is a different woman. This is beautiful. This is rich. It's opulent. And it has the sort of opulence that's not too loud and it's not tacky. So it never goes into tacky territory. And it's just an iconic, beautiful fragrance that will always be in my collection. The Esprit de Parfum is a bottle that was shipped to me and lost most of the perfume in travel. So there's just a little bit left in here. I would like to replace with another Esprit de Parfum. This is the EDT, which is also very, very beautiful. It's vintage. It's not as old as the Esprit de Parfum, but it is vintage. And I just love this, and it absolutely belongs on the list, and it's the last one on the list because I think it's an iconic fragrance, although Coco Chanel is just as iconic as this one and just as beautiful. So that is the list of 10 opulent, lush, rich fragrances in my collection that I look forward to reaching for as the weather gets colder. Let me know in the comments if you're familiar with any of these. And as always, thank you so much for watching, your support, and your comments. Until next time, bye guys.